Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Paris Schutz will join us shortly. Here's what we're looking at.
Today, safety, accountability, fairness, equity, and justice won for the people of Illinois.
The state is set to entirely eliminate cash bail, what advocates and critics say about today's historic ruling. With the final list now down to just 3, we hear from members of the commission charged with helping pick Chicago's next top cop. From one reverend to another, we meet the new leader of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And we go between the threads for a detailed look at a rug tufting class in Bridgeport. And now to Paris for our top story tonight.
Brandis, cash bail is about to be a thing of the past in the state of Illinois. That's after a ruling from the state's highest court, which upheld a contentious portion of the criminal justice reform law known as the Safety Act. Advocates say today's decision brings Illinois a step closer to racial and criminal justice reform.
Now, this means that the decision on who goes to jail or who doesn't will no longer rely on how much money your mother has, or your partner has, or your grandmother has, or your church has, or you have. This will literally return tens of millions of dollars to communities that need it most.
And WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson joins us now with more. So today's 5-2 ruling at the Illinois Supreme Court that means elimination of bail is cash bail, that is constitutional in Illinois. What does that mean in practicality?
It means that people arrested in Illinois will no longer be held in custody simply because they can't afford to pay a set cash bail. Under the current system, judges can set this cash bail amount for people who are arrested based on factors such as the charge or their criminal history. But once this takes effect September 18th, that process will be gone. Instead of holding people in jail because they can't afford that bail amount, a judge will decide to either release someone with set conditions or detain them pre-trial if they're charged with more serious or violent crimes and if they pose a flight or safety risk to the community.
And there was a lot of confusion about this bill. There were a lot of times that legislators went back to kind of tweak it to say, no, they can hold people pre-trial for certain offenses. Remind us how it ended up at the Supreme Court.
Right. So this change was supposed to take effect January 1st of this year, but there were legal challenges brought by dozens of state's attorneys across Illinois who were opposed to the elimination of cash bail entirely. Just before the start of the new year, a Kankakee County judge ruled that this change was actually unconstitutional. He ruled that the Illinois General Assembly had violated the separation of powers clause with these provisions. That put everything on hold. Attorney General Kwame Arule filed an appeal to the state Supreme Court, and that brought us to today's ruling, where the High Court ruled that the elimination of cash bail is indeed constitutional.
So the Illinois High Court disagreeing with the lower court in Kankakee, and GOP Senate leader John Curran, he said he didn't necessarily disagree with the law, but he's calling for a special session to make more tweaks to the law, particularly in hopes that judges get more leeway to make decisions to hold violent offenders in jail, correct?
Right. That's correct. Curran, he issued a statement saying, no one should be held in jail simply because they can't afford to pay a bail. But he believes that this change specifically handcuffs law enforcement and could lead to, it could make it more difficult to enforce certain crimes.
And Matt, we do have some sound from him. Let's just listen to what he said real quickly.
This was a flawed law to begin with. It was a rushed process in the middle of the night. So I would hope that there is, willingness to continue that tweaking process to get this right. We're not there yet. We have an opportunity to get law enforcement to the table, hear their remaining concerns, and let's address them before this actually goes into effect.
It wouldn't seem to me that Democrats that have supermajorities and the governorship would want to go back and tweak this law even more, so we'll see what happens there. But what are some of the other folks saying that have been opposed to this law?
There has been this main argument from people who are opposed to this change, saying that this would negatively affect public safety, that it would allow dangerous criminals back on the street. Advocates who have been pushing for this change for years and years say that cash bail already did little to improve public safety, and all it did was penalize people, keep them in jail simply because they were unable to afford a cash bail.
All right, so states' attorneys, judges, prosecutors have about 2 months now to get ready to put this law in motion. Matt Masterson, thanks very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Matt's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now back to Brandis for some more of today's top stories.
Paris, a former Northwestern University athlete, is filing a lawsuit against the school and its leadership over its hazing scandal, with more suits expected. The player, identified as John Doe in the court filing, alleges former football coach Pat Fitzgerald, along with university president Michael Schill, athletic director Derek Gregg, and the board of trustees, all enabled and covered up sexual misconduct and racial discrimination. That player was on the team from 2018 to 2022 and is seeking damages in this lawsuit. At least 8 former football players have retained attorneys, and former baseball players and other student athletes are also expected to bring legal action. Investigators say they have yet to identify victims after claims that Chicago police had improper sexual contact with migrants sleeping at police stations. The claims originated 2 weeks ago, which prompted the investigation from the Civilian Office of Police Accountability and outcry from immigrant rights groups. COPA's chief administrator says the claims originated from other city workers and that there is a new allegation they're looking into at another police district. But she says none of the charges have yet to be substantiated.
We have not identified any migrants claiming to be the victim of sexual assault or any form of sexual misconduct by CPD members. Given the severity of this allegation, COPA has allocated significant resources to the investigation of this incident.
Illinois State Police say they've arrested nearly 36 suspects and recovered hundreds of cars that were stolen or hijacked in just 3 months. From April through June of this year, ISP says it's recovered 204 cars and arrested 32 people suspected of stealing cars and 3 accused of hijacking them. The agency says a $10 million grant from the Secretary of State's office has allowed it to increase patrols and air operations, as well as the use of automated license plate readers and forensic services. ISP says it's also recovered 12 firearms in those investigations. Up next, members of the commission charged with helping pick Chicago's next top cop talk about the process right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Community leaders are looking for a transformational figure to lead the Chicago Police Department, and they believe they might have found 3. The finalists were selected by the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. The choice now rests with new Mayor Brandon Johnson to make what will most likely be the most consequential hiring decision of his administration. And joining us now to share their insights are community leader and advocate from Chicago's West Side, Ramel Terry, one of the commissioners who serves on the commission, and Anthony Driver, a lifelong South Side resident and political strategist who is the president of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. Both of you have been a part of this brand new process. You've just completed it. Congratulations. You went from 54 applicants down to the 3 finalists to present to Mayor Johnson. What were the guideposts that led you along this journey?
Well, we produced a brochure that sort of outlined the qualifications and expectations that we had in the next superintendent. We also included some of the impediments, potential impediments and opportunities for that individual. And so based on that brochure is how we took a look at the various applications along with the rubric and the things that we heard from community members, which are also inclusive of officers.
And Mayor Johnson, Anthony Driver, had requested that the next candidate be someone from the inside, not saying it had to be, but very strongly indicating that that was his preference. Did that guide your search?
To be honest, no. We wanted to make sure we found the best people, and that's what we've been focused on. So we did hear when candidate and now Mayor Johnson said that. That was also something that many others said along the campaign trail, but our focus has solely been on finding the best person for the job.
All right, and the 3 finalists you selected, 2 of them are in the CPD currently, Angel Novales, Larry Snelling, and Sean Barnes. Ramel Terry, what set them apart?
I would say that part of what we were looking for in a leader is a visionary, innovative, who had extensive experience in things that we heard from everyone that were very important: compliance with the consent decree, being able to address workforce allocation issues, officer wellness, and also establishing and building trust in communities where it never existed. And so we felt that those 3 candidates were able to effectively address how they would implement that if selected as the new superintendent.
All right, Anthony Driver, let's break them down candidate by candidate, starting with Angel Novales. What attracted you to him as a candidate?
Amazing leader, a person who has vast experience with the consent decree. He can quote specific paragraphs from it. He knows it front and backwards, and he knows what it's like to put his life on the line.
How about Larry Snelling?
The variety of people who sing his praises. You know, we talk to folks in the Attorney General's office. We talk to folks at the FOP. We talk to the community members at the South Side, on the South Side specifically, where he used to be the commander. And the vast majority of Chicagoans all have nothing but positive things to say about Larry Snelling, and also his preparedness. He's probably one of the most prepared people I've ever met in my life.
And Sean Barnes, there were some complaints that, you know, he had spent some time at COPA and now he's running a smaller police department in Madison. What about Sean Barnes stood out?
Yeah, I think you got to look at the totality of him as a candidate, as a person. He's a person who has a PhD. His dissertation was in racial bias in traffic stops. He's a person who's worked across the country. He spent, 10 months here in Chicago. Very, very, very well-versed candidate, collaborative person. He's done some really innovative things down in Madison, Wisconsin.
Ramel, Terry, did you want to add anything about any of these specific candidates?
I would just echo the sentiments. Like, we learned a lot about them, and they had a good grasp on how to tackle some of the most important issues, and I think that was so impressive. Like, being able to say things like, well, the issue that we see with compliance and consent decree is having an actual understanding of it, and then the messaging to the rank and file so that they have the buy-in to know that this is something that's beneficial to them. And just the creative ways in which to address these issues that Chicago is currently facing is what all of them exemplify.
Clearly you find it's important to have trust within the community, but also the trust and the backing of the rank and file. And Anthony Driver, as part of this process, you met with police officers, you met with community members. What were the things that you heard from them?
To be honest, we heard a lot of the same. And that's what drew me to the conclusion that we all want to feel and be safe in our communities. And we also want to be respected. When you're talking to officers, they're talking about canceled days off. They're talking about the inability to plan, having somebody who can message both to them and to the public on their behalf, and having a strong leader. That's many of the same things that we heard from the community. They want to be respected. They want their constitutional rights upheld, and they want to feel and be safe in their neighborhoods.
And in fact, this process got praise from the FOP president, John Catanzara, saying that no one had ever asked rank and file police officers in the past what they were looking for in a leader. So how did that feel to sort of get that compliment from them?
I think it felt extremely great, right, to hear directly from sort of a group that doesn't get a lot of attention and maybe not in the best light. So knowing that we are community members, knowing that we are not former officers and things of that nature, but them feeling respected and valued by our presence and knowing that we were taking this process very seriously, we felt great.
Anthony Driver, what are the next steps now? Brandon Johnson, as mayor, has a certain amount of time to pick one of these three, correct?
Yeah, so he has 30 days from last Friday. I don't know that exact date, but whatever that is, he has 30 days. He's currently on the clock. We've handed over the information that we have for him and his team to review. Once he makes a decision, it comes back before us. If he rejects, obviously we start over. If he does pick, it comes back before us for a public hearing, and then it's off to the city council for confirmation.
I should ask Ramel, Terry, are there any concerns with especially the two candidates that are currently in CPD because of the slow process of the consent decree that maybe some folks might have problems with people that have been associated with this for a while?
I mean, I think everything will have its challenges, but we are more than confident that those two individuals from internal have the capacity to do what's necessary, and they understand the challenges and the problems, and they have innovative ideas on how to address these issues. So I'm more than confident that if either of them are chosen, that they will be more than capable to do what's necessary in gaining compliance with the consent decree.
Anthony Driver, the mayor does have the right to reject all three and have you start the process over again. I'll go out on a limb and guess that you'd prefer not to go through all of this again, that you feel like you've gotten the three best candidates.
We do. However, I believe in checks and balances. Our commission is independent, and we believe in checks and balances. And should the mayor reject those, we stand ready to start the process over again.
All right, Ramel, Terry, Anthony Driver, congratulations on completing this first ever process of its kind, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More Chicago Tonight just ahead, so please stick around.
The official handoff of Rainbow Push Coalition leadership from the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. to the Reverend Frederick Haynes III happened today. Take a look.
Reverend Haynes, take it. You got a new president.
That the mission and vision of Rainbow Push is needed in 2023 as much as it was needed in 1973.
And joining us now is Reverend Frederick Haynes III, the new president and CEO of Rainbow Push Coalition. Reverend, congratulations. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for the congratulations.
So it's official. Let's start with what it's like for you to follow in the footsteps of a man like Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr.
Well, I can say it is all inspiring. In some ways, it's intimidating. I think we all know that he is a living legend, an icon whose heroic deeds for over 6 decades have literally changed the world, our nation, and it's very hard to find an area of life that has not been impacted by this brilliant prophet, justice general. And so that's enough right there to be intimidating, but the fact that it is Jesse Jackson is also inspiring. And I also recognize that there's no way I could fill his shoes, and so I'm going to do all I can to stand on his tall and strong shoulders.
Obviously a tough act to follow. What was it about this position that appealed to you?
Well, first of all, in my own life, I have felt a strong calling to the movement for freedom and justice. My own ministry has reflected that. And then I've had the privilege of being a protege, as it were, of Reverend Jackson. I spent a lot of time with him. I've learned so much from him. I unapologetically say that one of my unofficial degrees is having studied at the University of Jesse Jackson. So even though this was not something I ever thought would happen or dreamt would happen, when he approached me about it, I had to be prayerful and reflective, and eventually I felt it was something in keeping with what I feel called to do.
The University of Jesse Jackson, I'm sure it's had a number of students, yourself included. Tell us, you just mentioned it, about some of the community and social justice work that you have already done. Tell us about a little bit of that and how it will apply to this new role.
Well, number one, Reverend Jackson has been well known for his pursuit of economic justice. And in our own work, we have stood against economic predators that have, targeted communities that were already suffering. We have testified before Congress in that regard. Reverend Jackson has also been known for his massive voter registration drives, and so we have been a part of that. But at the same time, we've done it in Dallas in a very specific way to our community. And with the voter registration, we've engaged in voter education and mobilization, getting out the vote. So those are just some of the areas that are real consistent with the work of Rainbow Push. And again, I could go on and on, education, but there's just been, having studied at the University of Jesse Jackson, I have to honestly confess, so much of his influence has informed and shaped my sense of ministry at the church.
Tell us about some of your top priorities for Rainbow Push. You're in the job now. What do you want to get done immediately?
Well, the beautiful thing is that Reverend Jackson has gifted us with a strong foundation that is also a blueprint going forward. And so we will, on the one hand, be engaged in responding to those injustice emergencies that pop up. Reverend Jackson has a track record of lending his moral authority to situations of injustice and healing those who have been victimized by the injustice, while at the same time confronting and challenging the perpetrators of injustice. So that is going to be a constant in our fight. As long as injustice is anywhere, we will find ourselves there. At the same time, Rainbow Push has a wonderful track record in fighting for economic justice, fighting against economic injustice in all of its forms. And so we'll continue that. And that's a broad stroke, of course, but it manifests itself in as Breadbasket began, all those years ago, over 50 years ago, with seeking not charity, but parity, to quote Jesse Jackson, to make sure that corporations treat our communities and businesses right, that government procurement opportunities are something that are available and reflective of the population. Reverend Jackson has already mentioned that we're going to be on the case in Tulsa where a judge ignored the plight of those survivors of the trauma and terror there at Black Wall Street in 1921 and ignored the justice cry for reparations. And so we're going to Tulsa because we believe in reparations, especially for those who have survived such terror and trauma. And we'll be getting out the vote. So we're going to be doing what we've been doing.
Before we're out of time, we've got about 20 seconds left. I understand that you're not planning to move to Chicago. How do you plan to split your time between the two cities, and what does that mean for the organization?
Well, we see that Dallas will be a hub while Chicago will remain the headquarters. And so I will be back and forth between Dallas and Chicago. But also, as Reverend Jackson says, the fight for justice really is now in the South in a state like Texas. So Rainbow Push having a hub there will be vital.
A national organization, which means we'll be seeing more of you here in Chicago. Reverend Frederick Haynes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Up next, a new art class concept in Bridgeport that teaches you to make your own rug. But first, a look at the weather.
If you've ever wanted to make your own rug, we might have the place for you. Arts correspondent Angel Ito recently introduced us to a tufting class in Bridgeport that aims to bring more fun to the South Side. Here's another look.
I really love the neighborhood. I really want to bring something more fun to Bridgeport.
With a simple desire, Ernie Pun called her now business partner Susan Lee, and Freestyle Ceramics was born.
We first start with a ceramic because a ceramic is have no age limit.
Less than a year later, Pun and Lee expanded beyond ceramics to include freestyle tufting, a new art class concept that allows anyone to make their own rug.
We got a lot of phone calls after 1 month we started tufting that people were like, oh, so I'm trying to book online, but you guys are no availability. Yeah.
What started at 8 seats quickly expanded to 24.
You see the yarn here should be always tracing on top of the marker. So that's how you follow exactly. And then that's the part that you really want to do tap, 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 and don't press and hold. Okay. Otherwise it's going way too fast for you to follow, okay? Tap, and you turn the gun along the way. Are you ready for the fun part?
Yes, I am.
Ready to try?
I am.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready.
All right.
Each session begins with a practice tutorial to ensure every tufter feels comfortable with the tufting gun.
So you just push in, okay?
I just kind of wanted to see the difference. What do we think?
Very good. Your first time?
Yes. Is that tight? Is that because that was more like this one,
yes.
Right?
Again, there's no right or wrong. The gun we use is also the newest in the market. If you don't use the gun correctly, it's easy to poke holes of the fabric. So we have the ability to fix any of those issues.
After finishing the tutorial, the tufter sketches their image with the help of a projector, and then it's off to the races. Okay, we're set. With the smallest size offered taking about 3 hours to complete, Pun says the only requirement to do well is to have fun. Oh my gosh, this actually looks really good.
One thing about tufting is you don't really have to be an artist in order to make it happen.
Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
Very cool. Rug tufting begins at $68 with a $10 studio fee. We have more information on our website.
We should all get those WTTW rugs.
I was going
talk
to
to
say
somebody
we
about
need
that.
them in the office. Absolutely.
That's our show for this Tuesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app, and join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. The latest in lawsuits filed against Northwestern and athletic leadership in the wake of football hazing allegations.
And City Council casts a final vote on whether city crews should clear not only Chicago's roads, but also sidewalks of snow and ice. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
I don't want to think about snow and ice
It's
right now.
not in July.
Beautiful July. I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.